I am Anna Ward, 48, oldest child, wife, mother of 2. I keep grocery lists with a pencil and fold my receipts into the same zip pouch my father used. He labeled things in block letters. He liked tidy drawers. He kept a blue folder in the bottom file cabinet that said, Survivor Benefits. He kept his church shirt pressed even when he was too tired to stand long. He died in late June, a hot month. Flags on the Veterans Row stood straight in the wind.
We buried him with a photo of my mother tucked under his hand. On a Wednesday morning, I walked into a small brick bank on Maple Avenue. It smelled like toner and hand sanitizer. I wore flats. I carried the blue folder. A teller with a name tag that read Cara glanced at the folder, glanced at my face, then at the computer. She lowered her voice. "They've requested to close your father's account," she whispered. "Signatures are complicated. I wanted to give you a heads up." Complicated. The polite word people use when a door is half locked. I set a folded court injunction on the counter. I had filed it that morning with a lawyer's help. My hand did not shake. Not much. "I'm placing this now," I said. "We need a hold. We need statements. We need the camera records for last night." Kara looked relieved. She stamped a date. She made a call. I listened. The line clicked. The air conditioning hummed. Someone in the back counted cash, slow and steady like a metronome. There was a faint coffee smell, slightly burnt. The machine that prints the long receipts chirped and fed a thin tongue of paper. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother Mark. 3 words. "Don't do this." Another from my stepmother Carol. "Let the bank clean the books. It's just clothes." That line. I had heard it before, when we boxed up Dad's closet, when I held his dress blues and pressed my cheek to the rough wool. "It's just clothes," Carol said. I said nothing. I folded the jacket and laid it in the cedar chest. I felt the stitched name under my thumb. Ward. The fabric gave a little. The patches did not. I kept a button that had come loose years ago. "It's just clothes" followed me around the house like a draft. At the bank, I smoothed the injunction with my palm. Kara nodded. "Your signal is received," she said. Simple words. Kind. The phrase settled in my chest like a weight I could lift. I called my mother.
She sounded small on the phone, though she is not a small woman. "Anna? Mom, I'm at the bank. There were requests to close the account. I placed a hold." "Oh," she said, like a breath that missed a step. "Carol said it was housekeeping, end-of-month business. She said your father wanted it simple. Gosh, I wish he were here." "I know." I did not say more. Some words are better left in your mouth until they cool. I asked to speak with the branch manager.
I asked for 90 days of statements. I asked for copies of signature cards. I asked for a log of in-person withdrawals and the camera reel around those timestamps. I did not raise my voice. I used the same tone I use when telling a contractor to put felt paper under shingles. Calm, specific, no wiggle. At home, I laid papers on the dining table. I made columns, dates, amounts, notes. The blue folder sat open like a mouth that had something to say if I would stop long enough to listen. The phone buzzed again. Mark called. I stared at the screen, the family thread filled with little bubbles, a thumbs down, a prayer emoji, a little house. "It's just logistics," he typed. "Don't turn this into a drama." I called him back. "Why did you request a closure?" I asked. No preface. My sister used to say I talk like a judge when I'm tired. I wasn't tired. I was awake. "We agreed it was gumming up things," he said. "I thought you were on board."
"With what?" "With moving funds to expedite bills. Carol's been paying out of pocket." "Which bills?" "Stuff for the funeral. And the roof." "The roof?" I repeated. "Yeah, we had a leak. It was a mess. You would have seen if you came by more often." I looked at the calendar on the wall. Scribbles, blue ink. Pill reminders crossed out in double lines. I thought of my father's phone with the gentle pings to drink water, take the afternoon tablets, check the oxygen.
I thought of the texts he sent me when he was still him. Don't fret, kid. Your signal is always received. We set a family meeting for Friday night, neutral ground, my mother's living room, lamplight, a plate of lemon cookies on the coffee table, the kind from the bakery by the post office that still uses white boxes and red string. I asked our family lawyer, Ms. Kingston, to sit with us. She is short and steady like an oak stump, and she says please and thank you to clerks by name. Before the meeting, I opened Dad's cedar chest. Mothballs, wool, the faint clean scent from the dry cleaner. I lifted the dress blues, heavy cloth, rows of ribbon. I laid the jacket across a chair. I tucked the button I had saved back into the little envelope that said, Ward, left cuff. It is not just clothes, I thought. It is proof a life was lived with care. It is a ledger you can't fake. We sat, my mother on the end of the couch, to the left of the lamp, Carol across from her, hands folded like a patient at the dentist. Mark in the armchair, phone face down on his knee. I took the straight back chair we used to pull into the room for holidays. I put the blue folder on my lap. Ms. Kingston sat beside me with a legal pad. Thank you, I said. We'll stay respectful. We'll stay brief. Carol nodded. She wore a sweater with small gold buttons. Her lipstick was the exact color of the cookies. She glanced at the dress blues draped on the chair and then away, as if it were a photo of her from a decade she didn't want to revisit. First, I said, there was a request to close Dad's account. We have an injunction in place. No funds move without court notice. We need to reconcile 3 withdrawals this month that do not match care expenses. It was for the roof, Mark said. 3 contractors' estimates? I asked. My voice did not rise. The pencil on the legal pad scratched. Signed work order? Well, the leak was already there, and we used cash to hold the crew, and it was raining, Carol said quickly. All day. It felt like the house might fall in. I told Mark we're family. We'll square later. It's just clothes. There it was. The line again. It sat in the room like a spare chair no one wanted to claim. I looked at the jacket. I looked at my mother's hand on her knee, a small tremble. She still wore her ring. It caught the lamplight. For a second, I saw it on Dad's dresser in the little white dish with the screws and paper clips he kept. Miss Kingston cleared her throat, softly. We have the trust language, she said. The funds in question are designated. Care, medical, funeral. Any other uses must be approved by both designated children or by the court. Designated children, Carol repeated as if she had bitten a lemon seed. Anna and Mark, Ms. Kingston said, named by your late husband. The trust was amended last year. I handled it. Carol's jaw tightened. I took him to the appointment, she said. He was so tired. He told me he wanted things simple. Simple is not the same as vague, I said. Mark leaned forward. We're not thieves. I didn't say you were, I said. I said we need a record. When money moves, it leaves a trail. We will follow it. That protects us all. He blew out air. The chair creaked. The cookies sat between us like a dare. I opened the folder. Papers were clipped with labeled tabs, bank statements, doctor letters, the notarized healthcare proxy, the amended trust, a copy of a handwritten note from my father with a shaky signature that still managed to look like him. I read it quietly, not as a threat, as a frame. Funds for care, it said. Dignity for your mother. No one fights. If you do, read this line twice. I read it twice. Let's hear specifics, I said. 3 withdrawals, cash, all after 10 at night. The camera at the branch shows 2 people present together. Not your mother? I will request audio from the counter mic. Kara, the teller, made a note on the account. The roof work, the funeral overage, the pharmacy, we'll sort each, one at a time. We'll put numbers on a paper. We'll sign. Carol's gaze slid to my mother. It was scary, she said. The roof, the dark, the men on ladders. I thought if Richard were here, he'd handle it. But he wasn't. So we did what we could. I nodded. I hear the fear, I said. I do. We will not solve fear by breaking the rules he set to protect the house he loved. My mother spoke finally, a small voice with a clear core. Your father wasn't simple, she said. He was careful. He would call a roofer in daylight and watch the ladder and bring coffee to the crew and read every line on the invoice. We all pictured it. We all knew it was true. Mark rubbed his forehead. I didn't think about cameras, he said. Then let this be your education, I said. There are eyes, there are ears, there is ink, and when we agree tonight, there will be an oath. That way, no one has to shout later. We went through the ledger. We matched receipts to lines. The funeral overage was covered by a check from a service organization my father had joined in his 20s. I found the letter. It smelled faintly of the mailroom at work, dust and toner. We placed it under the appropriate tab. The pharmacy charges checked out. We highlighted dates that overlapped with hospice visits. We noted a credit from an insurance refund account. The roof sat there like a dog that chewed the couch. We waited to see if it would come when called. Estimate? I asked. It was verbal, Mark said. Name of the company? It was a crew out of town. Card, check, receipt? It was cash, he said. How much? He said a number. It was round. It had the neatness of fiction. Camera shows you and Carol withdrawing at 10:43, I said. You pull cash, you leave with a white envelope, you say to the camera, let's go. You can read lips now, Carol said, angry rising like a rash. I will request the audio, I said. We can do this the hard way, or we can do this the right way. The right way is easier. Silence. Only the small tick from the thermostat on the wall. The air in the room felt too dry and too wet, like crying in a grocery store. My mother slid the lemon cookies across the table. Eat, she said to no one, to everyone. I didn't. Words are easier on an empty mouth. Mark's shoulders dropped. I'll pay it back, he said. From your account, I said. Not from this one. That's the boundary. He nodded, barely. The room exhaled, a fraction of an inch. Now, I said, structure. I laid a paper on the table. 2 signatures for any future movement. Weekly email updates with any invoices. Caps and categories. Care.
Medical, funeral finalizations, nothing else? If an emergency arises, we call each other before the bank, not after. We record decisions in writing. That's an awful lot of control, Carol said, over clothes. I looked at the dress blues again, the stitches, the weight, the button I had tucked back. I kept my voice level. It's not about clothes, I said. It's about not taking a life of careful work and letting it melt into cash and dissolving into air. He earned this.
He marked it for dignity. We will honor that. Ms. Kingston tapped her pen lightly. This keeps everyone honest, she said, and it keeps the house quiet. The house, my mother repeated, as if she could taste the word. Quiet sounds nice. We wrote the agreement. Short lines, clear terms. We read it out loud. Our voices sounded like people leaving messages. Yours sincerely. Please confirm. Your signal has been received. Mark signed. I signed. Carol hesitated, then signed. She looked at the dress blues again, as if they had finally said something to her. Maybe they had. Some things don't speak until you sit still long enough to hear. We took a break. I stepped into the kitchen. The faucet dripped, a patient metronome. A bowl of apples sat in a line. I washed my hands. Paper towel. The cheap kind her church buys, a little scratchy. The moon through the window looked like a silver thumbprint on a black envelope. I breathed. When I came back, my mother stood in front of the cedar chest. She was holding the jacket. Her fingers worked the button that had loosened. She looked at me. "It is not just clothes," she said. I nodded. "No," I said, "it's a promise." She smiled, small and tired, like the sun at 8 in the morning on a January day. "Okay," she said. "Enough for tonight. We'll sleep." We did sleep. I woke up at 4 a.m. like I always do on the days that matter. I made coffee. I stood by the back door in my robe and looked at the dark. I thought about gutters and wills and the way a pencil feels when it gets dull near the end of a list. I thought about my father putting coins in a jar and then counting them out to teach me place value. I thought about learning the word fiduciary at 11 because he said, better to learn early than to pretend you understand later. He never pretended. He read every line. He crossed his T's and folded his receipts. The next day, I met with the branch manager. He had kind eyes that told me he had a teenager at home. He printed the logs. We reviewed the timestamps. He said the mic at the counter captures only fragments. The sound of an envelope. The phrase, "let's go." Not incriminating. Not nothing. We initialed the copies. A bank smell clung to my sweater on the drive home. Ink, plastic card, citrus cleaner. I emailed updates to the group. I kept the paragraphs short, the subject lines plain. Week 1, trust update. I sent a copy to Ms. Kingston. Within an hour, she replied, "Your signal has been received?" I smiled. I pinned the email to the top. 2 days later, I drove to the roof company Mark finally named. He had to fish around for it. He remembered a truck, a bird logo. I found the company with the bird. I asked for invoices. The woman at the desk clicked at her computer and handed me a printout with a price that was not the round number Mark had said. It was lower. She stamped it paid with red ink. The stamp made a wet squeak. There was no check number. "Cash," she said. "He said it was a family emergency." I gathered the paper and walked back to my car. The parking lot gravel crunched under my flats. I sat. I breathed. My phone buzzed. A new message from Mark. "I'll bring cash to Mom's tonight. We'll square. I'm sorry." Just that. Ellipses can do the work when you don't have strength for the whole word. That evening, I put a small bowl on the table. We counted the cash. We wrote a receipt. No moral lecture. Numbers are honest if you let them stand alone. My mother signed the receipt with that small, deliberate hand. Carol watched, quiet. Sometimes quiet is a win. Mark did not meet my eyes right away. When he did, the look was complicated. Boy, man, brother, neighbor who borrows your mower and brings it back with the tank full. The knot shifts. Not undone, not strangling. "Okay," he said. "Okay." We visited Dad's grave on Sunday. My mother wore a scarf against the wind. I brought a small brush to clear grass clippings from the stone. We did not say much. A little flag flapped. A boy down the row asked his mother why some stones have coins. The mother explained softly about honor and thanks. The boy nodded and set a penny on a name he did not recognize. The gesture was pure and strange and perfect. We left flowers. We stood a minute longer than we needed to. Then we went for pancakes because grief thins your blood and pancakes are the law in such cases. Monday, I returned the dress blues to the chest. I lifted the lid and smelled cedar and thyme and that dry, clean scent that never fully leaves. I touched the button. It held. I whispered, not for drama, for my own spine. It's not just clothes. I closed the lid. The hinge sighed like a person getting up from a long sit. The weeks that followed were not easy. There were small fights over small things that added up to more than their price tags. The lawn service, the cable package, the storage unit, death inventories your drawers in public. People who never cared about the 4th grade science project suddenly have opinions about whether the Tupperware should be stacked by size or by lid. The house, however, stayed quiet. Money moved only when it should. Care got paid. Medicine arrived on time. The kitchen stayed gentle. On a Thursday afternoon, the branch manager called. "Your father's certificate of deposit is maturing," he said. "We can roll it into the trust. We'll need signatures. We set a time. We sat together at the bank. Carol wore the gold button sweater again. Mark had the look men get when they have decided to show up even if they'd rather be anywhere else. My mother wore a blouse with tiny flowers and her church pearls, which are 14 inches, small beads, modest shine. We signed. The pen clicked. The paper slid. The printer hummed. The bank smelled like toner and lemon again. Kara, the teller, nodded at me, a quiet salute. "Congratulations," she said. "You did it the right way." "Thank you," I said. She lowered her voice. "I remember your dad," she said. "He used to bring donuts on Fridays. He liked the powdered ones that get on your shirt." I laughed a little. "Yes," I said. He did. We walked out into the afternoon brightness. The door thunked shut behind us. The sidewalk felt warm through the soles of my flats. The parking lot shimmered. It was a high-heat day that smelled like hot asphalt and cut grass. My mother took my arm. We moved slow. The world, though ordinary, looked slightly trued. That night, I found my father's small notebook in the blue folder, oil stains on the corners. It was the sort of pad you keep by the phone to write down a name before it evaporates. On the first page, in block letters, he had written, "For whom it may concern then, a list of account numbers and contacts." Then, in a handwriting that sagged, but still took up space like a person who knows he has a right to a chair, "No one fights. If you do, read this line twice." At the bottom, a line that was not for any bank or clerk or judge. A line for me. "Kid, your signal has been received." I closed the notebook and tucked it back. I did not cry. That would come later, at a bend in the grocery aisle by the cereal, when a box top cut my finger and the little sting felt like grief pretending to be a paper cut. For now, I made tea. I sat at the table. I looked at the list of small things we had done right. It added up. Weeks later, we had one more meeting. Not crisis, structure. I wanted to bake the new rules into the bones so no one had to hold them up with willpower alone. We met at my mother's again. The lemon cookies made their return. I printed a one-page policy. It looked like something you'd see in a school office, framed. Bold headers, short lines, purpose, scope, signatures. I read it out loud. My voice stayed level. Mark asked one question about the cap for minor house repairs. We set a number. Carol asked how we'd handle time-sensitive purchases. We set a text before withdrawal rule with a simple format. Date, item, cost, category. I kept the lines tight. No adjectives, no sermons. We signed again. When we were done, my mother stood and picked up the dress blues from the cedar chest. She held them out to me. "Take them," she said. "For now. You'll keep them safe." I took the jacket. It was heavier than it looked. Threads rough against my palm. Wool that had absorbed sunlight from parades and rain from funerals and sweat from standing too long at veteran ceremonies. I pressed the jacket to my chest. I heard my own heartbeat. It sounded like a careful man counting coins into a jar. Carol reached out and touched the sleeve. Her fingers were tentative, as if touching something sacred. "I shouldn't have said it like that," she said. "About clothes." "Thank you," I said. "That is sometimes all the ceremony you need." I drove home as dusk came down. The sky looked smudged with chalk. The road smelled like cut hay. My house windows glowed. My husband had left the porch light on. The dog pawed at the glass like he was drawing my name. I carried the jacket inside and laid it on the back of a chair we don't sit in because it's old and the wood creaks, and that seems respectful. I stood there for a minute with my hand on the sleeve. Then I cooked pasta. Then I washed the pot and left it to dry. The next morning, a letter arrived. VA, a routine update about survivor benefits, the kind of letter that uses dense paragraphs and references to sections. I read it twice. I made a copy. I filed it in the blue folder under survivor benefits. I wrote the date in pencil on the tab. It felt like a small, ordinary liturgy. It felt like stepping on a floorboard that does not give. The house stayed quiet. I kept the routines. Trash out Monday night, bills spread on the dining table, a glass of water set on the nightstand for the 2 a.m. wake-up. Grief is competent if you give it a list. It will check boxes, it will sweep, it will run a damp cloth over the stove, it will let you function while you are not quite a person. The phone chimed with calendar reminders, roof inspection, hospice follow-up survey. The unkind task of canceling a magazine subscription your father still received and always read from the back forward. A month after the injunction, the probate clerk set a status conference. Not a full hearing, a check-in. 15 minutes, Ms. Kingston said. You'll answer what you can. Short, clear, then you go home. The courthouse took up a block and a half and smelled like old paper, lemon cleaner, and the wool of winter coats left too long in closets. We waited on a wooden bench that flexed and creaked like an older back. Mark sat on my left. He wore a shirt with the top button undone. He had shaved, which is the male version of apology some days. Carol sat on my mother's other side. She held her purse with both hands. My mother placed one palm flat on her knee and kept her eyes on the floor tile, as if counting the squares might keep her steady. I kept the blue folder on my lap. I could feel the outline of the button inside the small envelope. A hard circle. Evidence you can touch. We went in. The judge had kind eyes and a tired posture that said he had watched too many families try to thread the same needle. We raised our hands. We promised to tell the truth. My voice did not waver. It helped that the truth did not need costume jewelry. The judge asked for a summary. I spoke in sentences that were short as receipts. My father's death, the trust terms, the account hold, the reconciled pharmacy and funeral costs, the cash withdrawal for the roof, since repaid, the new 2-signature rule, weekly emails. I placed a 1-page summary on the little shelf. I did not over-explain. I let the nouns do the work. He nodded. So the money marked for care and dignity remains for care and dignity. Yes, Your Honor, I said. He glanced at Mark and Carol. Any disagreement? No, Your Honor, Mark said. The words fell from his mouth like coins you meant to hold, but knew you should let go. Carol leaned toward the microphone. We were scared, she said. It rained hard. We made a bad choice. We fixed it. The judge's gaze softened a fraction. Good, he said. Keep it quiet. Keep it documented. He tapped the paper once with his knuckle, a small gavel of skin and bone. He added the paper to the file with a slide that made a sound like closing a desk drawer. Next case. We stepped back into the hallway. The air felt cooler, cleaner. My mother let out a breath that had been riding low for weeks. I thought there would be speeches, she said. No speeches, I said, just paper. We smiled. Public reckoning didn't need volume. It had a timestamp. On the drive home, we stopped at a thrift store my father used to like. He would look at cast iron pans and puzzles with missing pieces and say, "Someone loved these." We walked inside. The store smelled like old book pages and dryer sheets. Carol picked up a suit jacket from a rack and tested the shoulder seam with her thumb. She set it down carefully. "It's only fabric," she said. Then she corrected herself. "But sometimes fabric carries weight." "Yes," I said. "Sometimes it does." At the house, we ate grilled cheese, the kind with too much butter, the kind that makes the pan complain when you press the bread. We didn't talk about money. We talked about a bird feeder and the neighbor's new dog and the fact that the hydrangeas finally decided to be blue this year after years of uncertain pink. Small talk saves families more than anyone admits. The weekly rhythm worked. Emails on Fridays, short lines, attachments named like someone who respects the future version of herself. 2025-008 14 hospice invoice.pdf. We paid what we owed. We questioned what didn't look right until it did, or until it left the page. When Mark slipped and sent a link to a payment without the invoice, I wrote gently, "Need a PDF, please." He sent it 5 minutes later with no sigh, no sarcasm. That felt like growth, not dramatic. Enough. In early fall, I cleaned my father's workshop, the room in the garage where he kept jars labeled short screws, odds, and maybe. The air smelled like oil and cedar shavings and whatever a long life of tinkering leaves in the cracks of a floor. I wiped dust from the bench. I stacked coffee cans with labels faded to the color of old teeth. I found an index card with a list in all caps. Fix. Loose step front porch. Look at garage door track. Remind. Anna, check gutters before first freeze. I read the last line twice. I smiled without quite meaning to. Your signal has been received, I said aloud to no one. The room held the words the way a jar holds screws. Simple, useful, ready. On Sunday, I set a ladder and cleared the gutters. Dry leaves, small sticks, the cherry pit my niece had spit from the driveway in July because her aim was wild and her laugh louder than the radio. I wore gloves. The edge of metal bit the pad of my thumb through the cotton. A clean sting, the kind that says, alive. That night, we had another small meeting. Not because of a crisis, because of weather. Winter was coming. We needed to decide about salt for the driveway and whether to contract with a plow. I made cocoa. My mother wore thick socks that slid on the kitchen tile. Mark came with a catalog from a hardware store. Carol brought a tin of cookies that pretended to be sewing supplies. We laughed when we opened it. Not cruel, familiar. We chose a local plow company. We paid in advance from the appropriate category. We arranged for them to push snow wide so the mail carrier could reach the box. We wrote the details on a card and taped it inside the back door. We each touched the tape when we were done, as if adding our fingerprints sealed the plan. December gave us a storm that looked like a movie and felt like heavy work. The plow came at dawn. The house stayed warm. Inside, the cedar chest held steady. The dress blues slept. Then, one more test. In January, Carol's sister slipped on ice and broke her wrist. Carol panicked. She called me from the ER waiting room. The television in the background droned about weather maps and an anchor asking strangers on sidewalks how cold they felt. "I need to borrow," Carol said. "Just a little. I'll replace it next week. It's just clothes." The old reflex, the old phrase, it had a groove. It wanted to be used. I took a breath. I looked at the paper taped by the back door. I kept my voice warm and the words square. "We'll help," I said, "but not from the trust. I can Venmo you now."
Mark can send something too. We'll cover groceries and rides. We'll bring soup. The trust stays for Mom and Dad's dignity. We keep it quiet. We keep it clean. Silence. The TV in the background shifted from weather to sports. Someone said, "Highlight reel." Carol's breath was a little ragged. "Okay," she said. "Okay." I sent money. Mark sent money. We brought soup. We did not touch the trust, a small victory that no one could see unless you knew where to look.
Late winter turned the snow piles into gray loaves at the mouths of driveways. The air smelled like wet cardboard. The bank sent a letter about annual statements. I scheduled our signatures. When we walked into the branch, Kara greeted us like neighbors at a church social. The printer hummed. The pens clicked. The statements wove together a story of restraint. The numbers rose and fell the way they should. The column for care did the work. The column for everything else stayed empty by design. Public reckoning, quiet and tidy, printed in 12-point font. On the way out, Mark stopped at the little display of free calendars. He took one with photos of covered bridges, the kind of thing our father would have called a good freebie. Mark rolled the calendar like a blueprint and tapped it against his leg. At the door, he turned. "I used to think you were bossy," he said. "Maybe you are. But you were right about this." I'm not keeping score, I said. Maybe we should, he said. A little. For once. We laughed. Not loud. Enough. Spring came like it always does. Suddenly slow. A crocus near the front step made a small point of purple. The neighbor's dog stopped barking at the mail carrier. The porch light burned out. I changed the bulb without announcing it to anyone. Some tasks are not metaphors. They are just tasks. On a Saturday, my mother pulled a cardboard box from the top of a closet. Inside were shirts in careful stacks, ties in a neat coil, the hoodie he wore to paint the fence when he didn't want to ruin good clothes. She lifted a shirt and pressed it to her face. It's almost gone, she said. His smell. I put a hand on her shoulder. We stood like that for long enough to make a new memory out of the old one. Do you want to donate some? I asked. She nodded, then shook her head, then nodded. Not the dress blues, she said. Not the dress blues, I said. We folded. We boxed. We chose what to keep. We placed the ties back in the coil and slid the box onto a shelf with a label that said, "In my father's hand, keep." The ink was faded, but bossy. I obeyed. That evening we ate on the porch. The air smelled like cut onions and grass. Carol held her glass with both hands, the way people do when they want to keep their place in a room. She cleared her throat. I've been thinking about what I said, she began, about clothes.
I looked at the jacket through the open door, visible by a slice of lamplight where the cedar chest stood open for an airing. I know, I said. It was a defense, she said. If it's only fabric, you don't have to feel all the ways it holds you accountable. We let that sit. I see him when I pass the chest, she said. Not a ghost, just a standard. That's a good word, I said. Standards don't yell, she said. They're just there. Silent law, my mother said. He liked that.
We sat quiet, listening to the neighborhood. A basketball thumped. A grill lid clanged. Someone laughed on a porch that wasn't ours. The day thinned to a blue that felt like a deep breath you don't release all the way. Summer brought new lists. AC tune-up, tree trimming. The trust paid for a chair with arms that made it easier for my mother to stand without asking for help. Small dignities are not small. Mark installed a handrail. He did it right the first time. No shortcuts, level, studs found, screws set and capped. He stood back, arms crossed, the way our father used to stand when a thing lined up. Looks good, I said. I measured twice, he said. We both smiled at the old line. We both looked at the cedar chest. We didn't have to say it. In August, I found a church program tucked into the blue folder. The date was from spring 2 years before. There was a note on the margin in my father's hand. Powdered donuts Friday. The ink had smudged, a small rain of blue where his thumb must have brushed before the line dried. I laughed. I cried a little, not a storm. A summer shower that cleans the air. I brought a box of powdered donuts to the bank on a Friday. I set it on the counter. Kara blinked and then grinned. For him, I said. For him, she echoed. We each took one. Powder sprinkled our shirts. We didn't brush it off. We wore it for an hour, like a badge you could wash but chose not to yet. By fall, the house had a new rhythm. Weekly updates took less time. Recliner with arms, bath mat that didn't slide. Quiet. We bought a lamp with a wide switch for my mother's room because little switches can be cruel to stiff fingers. She turned it on at night and said, "There," every time, like a small ceremony. One evening, the 4 of us sat for dinner. Roast chicken, green beans, biscuits in a cast iron pan, dark from years of use. Carol set her napkin carefully on her lap and said, out of nowhere, "Thank you." She looked at me, then at Mark. "Both of you, for not letting me break what he built." "You helped build it too," I said, "because that was true and also kind." She shook her head, and for once the gesture was not defense, but humility. I'm learning, she said. Late, but I am. Late is still on time if the door's open, my mother said. He always left the porch light on. We ate. We laughed a little. We talked about garbage pickup, moving to Thursday because of the holiday. We made coffee, the kind where the machine gurgles like a content animal. We did not talk about money. We didn't have to. The standard held. Before we left, I opened the cedar chest. I checked the button with my fingertip. Firm. I pressed my palm against the sleeve the way you lay your hand on a warm car hood at dusk. Old motion. New meaning. On the drive home, the radio played a call-in show. A woman's voice, older than mine, told a story about her brother and a boat and a will that forgot to mention the boat, and how the fight lasted 2 summers until everyone forgot what the fight was for. The host said something kind and forgettable. The caller paused and said, "I wish we had written it down sooner." I turned the volume down, not to ignore her, but to honor her. It takes volume to tell strangers you are sorry to people they do not know. I whispered into the car where only I could hear, "Your signal has been received. Winter again." The calendar arced its way back toward the day we lost him. The veteran's row held its flags straight. We stood in front of his stone and read his name the way you read a line you have memorized and still say out loud so other people will hear it too. We placed a coin. We straightened the small flag. We did not rush. A boy down the row, maybe the same boy, asked again about the coins. Someone new answered him right. The coin clicked against granite, a small bright sound. At home, my mother handed me an envelope. My name was written in the block letters I knew better than my own. Inside, a check from a tiny insurance policy I had forgotten existed. Not much. Enough. A note in my father's voice. From years ago. For the first time, you have to hold the line when I can't. You will be kind. You will be clear.
I trust you. Kid, your signal will always be received here. Where did you find it? I asked. In the file drawer behind the manuals, she said. He labeled it with the wrong year. He was tired. I think he wanted to make you smile later. It worked. It worked like a porch light left on when you didn't ask. I put the note back in the envelope. I added it to the blue folder. I closed the folder. The plastic flexed and popped. A little. Satisfactory. Like a good lid on a jar.
I walked to the cedar chest. I opened it. Cedar. Wool. That ghost of dry clean solvent that clings to a life that sat on church pews and in waiting rooms and in veterans' halls with bad coffee and strong handshakes. I lifted the dress blues and felt the weight settle across my arms. The fabric scratched my skin in a way I wanted to keep. I held it against my chest. I spoke to the room, to the house, to the standard we had agreed to carry. It's not just clothes. We kept the rules. We kept our voices soft. We kept our receipts. We kept the porch light on. And when I lay down that night, the house quiet and the gutters clean and the bank balanced, I heard the simplest thing in the world, old as coins counted into a jar. Your signal has been received. If you're watching from a small town or a busy city, tell me where you are. Comment, "I see you," if you've had to hold a boundary for someone you love. If this story steadied your hand, subscribe, only if you want to help another survivor feel less alone.